The Legend of the Killer Company. Cha Si-hyuk, aka REDSHIRT. After meeting the woman he loves, he decides to retire. But the company has no intention of letting him go so easily. One by one, everything he holds dear is taken from him, and Cha Si-hyuk is forced to take up the sword once more. Revenge ignites. In a brutal war with the powerful organization, Neville becomes inevitable. What will be left at the end of his blade of vengeance? Let's begin the story. The scene opens with a man surrounded by several armed men, feared by countless killers. REDSHIRT, the man who single-handedly kept the organization alive. Now, he wants just one thing: retirement. But in a field like this, there's no such thing. You either keep working, or you die. The guy with the eye patch stepped forward, ready to fight, but the boss raised a hand, stopping everyone. He let our guy go. In the end, he chose not to spill each other's blood. On the way home, our boy was chatting with his girlfriend about their unborn baby. Siksik, the girl on the other end, was having a good time talking to her hubby. The protagonist looked at the graphics of his future son, and suddenly, he felt something, a man from behind, holding a sharp knife, ready to finish his task. Just in time, the protagonist managed to escape. The guys on the bus went into panic mode. The killer, with a blank expression, told everyone to fuck off and pointed the knife at our guy. As the citizens got off the bus, the killer started his slashing dance. But my guy, he didn't even flinch. He grabbed the killer's arm and landed a skull-crushing punch, quickly following it with another. He then grabbed the guy's neck and demanded to know who the hell he was. Even with broken teeth, the guy laughed, calling him a fool for thinking he'd leave unscathed after leaving the company. The protagonist then tried to call his girlfriend, but, as usual in stories like this, the call didn't connect. Meanwhile, his wife, who had just finished preparing dinner, wondered why her husband hadn't come home yet. That's when there was a knock at the door. A man claiming to be her husband's colleague said he had something to deliver. As she opened the door, a towering man stood in front of her. He forced his way in. She begged him to spare her, but the eye patch-wearing bastard grabbed her by the hair and pressed a knife to her neck. Meanwhile, our protagonist was sprinting toward his home, hoping to see her. But as soon as he reached the door and saw multiple sets of footsteps outside, his face turned pale. He rushed inside, only to be greeted by the eye-patched bastard calmly eating the soup his wife had made. In that moment, he understood the real reason behind his forced retirement. But the bastard didn't care about baggage like that. The protagonist noticed the blood splattered across the floor. He demanded to know if the chairman was aware of this. The man slowly removed his eye patch and replied, "He doesn't." Then, with a smirk, he added, "But I want to impress the chairman. And your existence?" He couldn't care less. The goons rushed forward to attack. Our guy caught the first one, crushed his arm with a brutal blow, then finished him off by stabbing him with his own knife. The others got solid hits too. One goon managed a mid-air kick and tailed our guy. But within seconds, he tried to run back, couldn't, and got crushed. Now. Our guy became the name he was known by, REDSHIRT, and that one-eyed bastard, he was thrilled to fight him. The fight began, knife against knife, exchanging vicious stabs and slashes. Both were putting up a hell of a fight, dodging each other's attacks, countering blow for blow. At one point, our guy shoved the one-eyed bastard forward, slamming him hard onto the table. He swung his knife, but the one-eyed freak barely managed to stay on his feet and retaliated with a stab, only to have it stopped easily. Suddenly, blood trickled from the bastard's neck. Looks like our guy's earlier attack hit its mark after all. Still, the one-eyed bastard wasn't done. He lunged again, but this time his arm got sliced open, bleeding like a stuck pig. Our guy didn't let up, kept stabbing at his vitals, relentless. The bastard was bleeding out, losing steam, barely able to stand. With one final slap to the face, our guy sent him sprawling onto the sofa, done for. And our boy didn't waste a moment to end this piece of shit. Our guy took a breath and moved toward one of the rooms. His thoughts started to drift, moments with his girlfriend, the future they dreamed of. But then reality hit like a punch to the gut. Right in front of him lay her lifeless body. The scene cuts to the crematorium. The girl's body laid in a coffin, surrounded by the memories of her final moments. The protagonist was on the phone with the chairman, explaining the situation and what he had done. The chairman admitted it was his fault for not keeping his dogs on a leash and apologized, but we knew that this bastard wouldn't just let it slide. Even if those fools were idiots, they were still his family. The chairman, Lee Kwang-won, the current top boss, had no choice. He was sending more killers after him, but the protagonist just told him not to bother. He'd come for him anyway. The scene shifts. Two goons were chatting in a room. Word was going around that HQ was asking for more manpower just to take down one guy. They were talking about the incident we covered earlier. The fat guy couldn't wrap his head around it. What was so special about the guy who got killed after ganging up on one guy? The bald guy, however, knew better. They weren't just dealing with anyone. He was top killer, REDSHIRT. He knew the guy's reputation and even feared that he might start a war, which the fat guy thought was pure exaggeration. Confident as ever, he believed the company would win. Suddenly, the room froze. A figure walked in, and the bald guy broke into a cold sweat. It was him, our guy. He didn't waste any time. He wanted to know if the boss was around. The whole room was drenched in fear, except for the fat guy, who thought it was the perfect chance to prove himself. Knife in hand, he grabbed REDSHIRT by the collar, ordering his men to lock the exits. But before he could do anything, an older, crippled man interrupted, calmly telling the fat guy, Duckman, to bring coffee. Turns out, this was the boss of the small gang. Duckman grumbled, but complied. As they sat down, the old boss, curious, asked why a guy like REDSHIRT would come to a washed-up backroom thug like him. Wasting no time, REDSHIRT laid it out. He needed the old man to gather his men and cars. He was going to kill Chairman Lee Kwong-won. Duckman, still fuming, tried to butt in, but the old man shut him up. That's when it came out. The old man's name was Lee Bong-won, the older brother of the chairman. Once the rightful heir, he lost the succession race and got thrown out by his own family. As a final insult, his younger brother took his left leg, making sure he'd never stand up to him again. Now, he was just a small-time killer with a bunch of goons. But Bong-won wasn't dumb. He knew handing REDSHIRT over to his brother would benefit him. Sensing that greed, REDSHIRT called him a bastard on his face, who was too scared of losing his other leg to actually fight back. That did it. Duckman snapped, grabbed REDSHIRT's collar, and started dragging him. But REDSHIRT noticed a knife on the table before and stabbed Duckman in the shoulder without a second thought. Before the fat guy could even process it, more brutal stabs followed. The rest of the crew stood paralyzed with fear as Duckman collapsed to his knees. My guy dragged him toward Bong-won and slammed him hard onto the table. With a menacing aura, our boy asked if he was in, if he'd take down his brother for him. And judging by the old man's face, we already knew the answer. Meanwhile, at the headquarters, Chairman Lee was making his own plans. He summoned a few high-ranking people, directors, deputy directors, and managers. Suddenly, 3 more people entered the scene, and they seemed unusually rude, even toward the chairman. It was surprising since one might expect them to be the most reliable. However, the guy in the middle, who was clearly the leader, quickly told them to quiet down and show respect to the chairman. The 3 bowed, and without wasting any time, the chairman asked if they could handle the task. The leader confidently assured him, suggesting they prepare Team A's support and leave the rest to them. The scene shifts back to the protagonist, where Lee Bong-won asks him if he's ready to face the consequences after killing the chairman. The protagonist simply expects proper support. Everything else will be his responsibility. After that, he takes his leave. As he leaves, Bong-won starts laughing, then orders his men to make preparations because the tables have turned in his favor. It seems pretty clear who could have sent the eye patch, but let's not spoil the story. Scene cut to the Audi, flashing its sleek looks, and inside was my guy, heading out to slice some bodies. That's when he noticed something. 3 cars were tailing him from behind. In one of those cars were the same triplets we saw earlier. 2 of them, excluding the boss, were engaged in a very important debate. Should they buy a washing machine or a gaming console? Since one guy did all the laundry, he insisted on buying the machine. They were even ready to throw some punches to decide when the main guy shut them up, promising to buy everything after the mission. Suddenly, the Audi made a sharp 180-degree turn and sped straight toward the triplet's car. The side guys completely freaked out, but the main guy, staying totally calm, ordered the driver to accelerate, and the dude did. Both cars were about to collide when the driver, terrified of dying before playing the new game console, swerved at the last second, barely managing not to crash. That's when he realized just how psychotic REDSHIRT could get when it came to killing. Our boy stopped the car and stepped out with a single knife. The killers thought they could easily handle one guy and charged forward with all their numbers. Meanwhile, in the triplet's car, Ponytail had already expected those amateurs to go down quickly. Mole Guy mocked him, asking if he could really take down all those guys single-handedly. The leader grabbed their attention, warning them not to underestimate the situation. He had a hunch that one of them might not make it back. With that, the triplets stepped out, ready for the fight. They spotted the bloody, messy aftermath. the protagonist standing in the middle of it all, giving a deadly stare with his crimson eyes. The fight between the chairman's triplets and the protagonist began. Our guy sent Mole Dude flying with a single punch, but the other two didn't break their coordination. Ponytail dashed past him while the protagonist's focus shifted to the main guy. Suddenly, Ponytail made a sharp 180-degree turn by swinging around a pole, and now the protagonist was trapped between the two. At the last second, our guy dodged the knife strike, causing Ponytail's kick to hit his own leader instead. Even so, Ponytail recovered quickly, jumped up, and activated a knife hidden in his shoe. He managed to stab our guy and was happy for being first to make him bleed, clearly thinking he'd won. But the next second, he was slammed hard on the ground. With a cut on his lower back, the protagonist knew he couldn't afford to drag this out. Deciding to end it quickly, he prepared for the next charge. The triplets attacked again. While the protagonist was busy dealing with two of them, Ponytail came from above and stabbed his left thigh this time. It was obvious now. Ponytail might be the first to die, but the three continued their relentless assault, coordinating seamlessly. Two would keep the protagonist occupied while the third struck at just the right moment. Blood loss was catching up to him. If this went on, he wouldn't last much longer. One slip in his focus, and it could cost him a fatal blow. He needed to find an opening, and fast. The mole guy was feeling pretty good, thinking it was all about to be over. But the leader wasn't having it. He warned him to stay on guard. Our boy, seizing the chance, used the pole as a makeshift shield. That's when the main guys got told him that the guy was dangerous, and those were definitely the eyes of a top-class predator. Just as the leader made up his mind not to act recklessly, the mole prick charged in like an idiot, reckless and overconfident. He was so sure of his attack until he locked eyes with that fierce gaze. It froze him just for a second, but that was more than enough for our protagonist to subdue him, following up with a few quick stabs. The remaining guys were paralyzed with fear, instantly dropping their weapons and begging to be spared, promising they'd do whatever it took to survive. But our guy wasn't one to just trust a bunch of lowlifes. He finished the mole shit off and then coldly told the other two to pick up their weapons if they wanted to live. Enraged, the remaining two grabbed their weapons and lunged like mad dogs. Ponytail was the first to catch a punch, getting knocked back. The leader tried to show off some moves, but he didn't last long. Just a few desperate swings before he got killed. Now, it was just Ponytail left. He barely had time to react before taking a clean kick to the face. And just like his buddies, he met the same grim fate. News about the team and the triplets spread like wildfire. And soon enough, a few people were stationed outside the headquarters building. Just a few minutes later, the walkie-talkie guy was sweating bullets. Standing right in front of him was our protagonist. And it was obvious why they called him REDSHIRT. Inside the headquarters building, someone was barking orders to hold back our protagonist. That person was the team leader. His team was visibly shaken, clearly dreading the idea of facing REDSHIRT. The leader told them to brace themselves because Cha-Si-hyuk was on his way, and they all knew exactly what that meant. By the way, Cha-Si-hyuk was our protagonist's name, but I just didn't find it suited with his personality, so I didn't go with it. Meanwhile, outside the building, a crowd was starting to gather. From above, we see the head of security, Onamung. Since many eyes would be watching outside, he ordered the guards to let the protagonist in so they could deal with him more easily. Yeah, easy for them to die. The guards made way for the protagonist. From inside, a man came rushing. It was the team leader and a good friend of the protagonist. He knew everything that had happened to him, but from his perspective, the protagonist was blinded by anger and would end up dead if he went inside. The team leader's name was Mansuya. The protagonist just mentioned that they had received the baby clothes and that his girlfriend, Miju, really liked them. He thanked Mansuya for it and walked inside without saying another word. As he stepped inside, the guards started to make their moves. They politely told the outsiders to leave, claiming they had some urgent matters to handle. The other guards, too, began positioning themselves around the protagonist. He got into the elevator, and the guards followed, taking their places, one at each corner. The scene looked almost identical to that iconic moment from Marvel's Captain America. We all know how that turned out. Now, let's cut to Chairman Lee Kwang-won. The security head reported that they had confiscated weapons and rounded up Lee Bong-won's men. However, he thought the chairman was over-preparing for just one guy. It was clear that the chairman must have heard that the protagonist had met with Lee Bong-won. The security head felt they needed to quickly figure out why the chairman was going to such lengths. The story goes back to when the two brothers were still working together. At that time, Lee Bong-won was the president, and Guang Won was the vice president. One day, the president instructed his brother to deal with Sunwoo Construction, those persistent bastards who always meddled in their projects. He wanted to wipe them out completely. The person assigned to assist Guang Won was none other than our protagonist. Guang Won couldn't understand why a rookie was sent to tag along, but they headed inside to meet the head of Sunwoo Construction anyway. When they arrived, the vice president greeted the man, but the bossy bastard only wanted to talk to the president. He made it clear he wasn't backing off from the project. Then, his men locked the door, and the guy demanded they put their stamp on the deal if they wanted to leave alive. That's when the protagonist made his move. He walked straight up to the bossy guy and delivered a clean slap, followed by smashing his head onto the table. Naturally, the goons didn't appreciate that and rushed in, only to get a solid beating. The whole scene was witnessed by one person, and just a few minutes later, they got what they came for. As they descended the stairs afterward, Guang Won called the protagonist reckless, saying he shouldn't have taken on so many guys at once. The protagonist's response was simple. He knew he wouldn't be on the losing side. That's when Guang Won realized something important. People like Cha Si-hyuk are completely dangerous. Regardless of their abilities, they never pick fights they can't win from the start. And if they do start one, they know they're going to win no matter what. The scene cuts to the ponytail guy, standing ready to receive orders from his boss. And his boss was none other than Bong Won himself. He told him it was time to make a move and even gave the green light to use lethal force if necessary. Meanwhile, the elevator reached the 41st floor. As the door slid open, the 4 guards who had ganged up on our guy were already dead. The protagonist calmly made his way out while the remaining guards could only watch in fear, cursing their own buddies for provoking him in the first place. One desperate guard, determined to make a move, lunged forward with a knife. Before he could even process his own mistake, the protagonist pulled an Uno reverse, and on top of it, he delivered a skull-crushing punch that sent the guy sprawling. The bystanders were paralyzed with fear, but still, they thought their numbers could overpower him. They charged toward the protagonist, who remained calm as ever, ready to send these shitty people to the afterlife. Meanwhile, Bong Won was talking to his underlings, planning to deploy the standby team. However, they were too outnumbered to make a move. But this war wasn't just about numbers. The tide could turn depending on who took the lead. The scene cut back to the protagonist's side, and it was a complete bloodbath. The guard were just salaried people. No matter how much they loved money, they loved their lives even more. Seeing the pool of blood made from their comrades was enough to crush their spirits. Fear took over, and none of them dared to challenge the protagonist. Suddenly, one guy came forward with unsettling news. Like fuel to the fire, it only intensified their fear. Lee Bong Won's side had launched a surprise attack. Meanwhile, the chairman made his ace move and summoned the 12 Zodiac, a team of 12 people whose names were based on animals. Bear with it. Monkey and Pig were given the task to defend the bottom. As a reward, they would each receive 1 billion. The offer was also valid for the remaining members, and if they managed to bring Cha Si-hyuk alive, the chairman also promised an additional special bonus. Motivated by the money, they set off. As they approached the protagonist, they tried using words to make him stop. The guy with glasses even threw in an emotional speech, suggesting they resolve the matter calmly. But the protagonist just asked how much they were being paid. He knew better than anyone that they'd struck a solid deal. The bystanders didn't like the discrimination toward them. The first guy, who didn't appreciate the protagonist's attitude, pulled out a shuriken and hurled it his way. The protagonist easily dodged it while closing in on him, and just like that, another victim was added to the list. Next was the glasses guy, who preferred using weapons from his great-grandparents' era. It didn't take long before he was killed too. The third guy swung some kind of weapon, I don't even know what it's called. But honestly, once the weapon holder goes down, the weapon itself becomes worthless. After that, the wave of attackers seemed more normal, guys using modern weapons. But the protagonist didn't care about weapons anymore. He just cut them down left and right without a second thought. The new guy attacked with a long chain weapon, which was supposedly a kuzarigama. His skills were impressive, clearly just showing off. But the protagonist wasn't a fan of flashy dance moves, so he just threw a knife and ended it right there. After that, he made his way to the first guy, who was somehow still alive. The guy was almost pissed, seeing our protagonist saving his ass. Desperately, he started spilling everything, telling everyone about the 10 billion offer the director gave them. He clearly expected help from the others. But since half their numbers were wiped out and even the so-called top fighters got killed, nobody was willing to keep fighting. So, Our MC didn't waste any more time to kill the bastard. The protagonist finally understood just how desperate the chairman really was, offering 10 billion just to take him down. He couldn't help but scoff, calling them all pieces of shit who couldn't even take down one guy, even with that kind of reward dangling in front of them. That hit a nerve. Furious and humiliated, every single one of them charged at him, their eyes burning with the hunger for that insane payout. The scene shifts to the first floor lobby, where Lee Bong-won's group was attacked. Some of the 12 Zodiacs were present: dog, pig, rooster, and monkey. After cleaning up the area, they decided to move upward. Monkey took charge of the team, ordering Dog to take the stairs while Rooster and Pig blocked the entrance. With that, he headed toward the MC. Inside the elevator, we see the team leader, Man Suya, along with his right-hand man. The latter asked if he was really sure about doing this. But with a 10 billion bounty on the chairman's head, there was no way Man Suya would back down. As they reached the 41st floor, they were greeted by utter chaos. The massive bounty had driven everyone insane, making them lose their minds completely. It was a scene of pure carnage, blades slashing, punches flying, and stabbing from every direction. The space was wide open, leaving no cover from the relentless attacks, making it practically impossible to dodge. Our MC quickly realized just how disadvantageous the situation was. The crazed attackers thought just a little more force would be enough to take him down, so they recklessly threw themselves at him. Just then, the team leader came flying in, hitting one of the lunatics and sending him sprawling across the floor. All eyes immediately followed their fallen comrade. The team leader snapped everyone back to reality, taking control of the situation. Did they really want to get themselves killed over that insane offer? Even if they did get the money, they couldn't just retire. They'd end up like Choi Si-hyuk. The chairman wasn't exactly a trustworthy guy, and there was no guarantee they'd ever see that 10 billion. But one stubborn bastard still didn't get it. To him, it was all about the money, trust, emotions, and thinking about the future didn't matter. Unfortunately, his warped mindset gave some twisted morale to the others, and they started questioning the team leader's timing. Paranoia set in. They began accusing him of being a traitor, and to them, a traitor had to die. In a frenzy, they decided to gang up on the team leader too. Suddenly, the MC took off running, taking down 2 guys in the process. He bolted towards the stairs, with the crazed, money-hungry freaks right on his heels. The team leader and his men tried to block them, but the numbers just weren't on their side. The gang reached the stairs and spotted the MC standing in the narrow passage between 2 flights. To them, he looked almost dead, and they were ready to finish him off. That's when the real show started. The MC unleashed chaos, stabbing and slashing left and right. Within moments, the stairs turned into a blood-soaked disaster, bodies piling up so high it became nearly impossible for the remaining guys to move upward. Well, guess our guy definitely took advantage of the high ground. One of them glanced back to warn the others, only to realize that only 3 of them were still alive, including himself. The realization hit hard. They were screwed. The MC, still standing above them, made his move. He told them to keep going and started descending the stairs. Now completely terrified, the last 3 begged him to spare them. They'd seen enough death for one day, but we all knew how it was going to end. The MC, with a dark and menacing aura, told them straight. If they wanted to live, they'd have to kill him.